Let's get out of here. Look, Emerald City is closer and prettier than ever. Out of the woods, you're out of the dark, you're out of the night. Step into the sun, step into the light.
Blues are dilaudid in such great amounts that the spoon would literally be overflowing. Upon entering my vein, the drug would start a warm itch that would surge along until the brain consumed it in a gentle explosion that began in the back of the neck and rose rapidly until I felt such pleasure that the whole world sympathized into a soft, lofty appeal. Everything was grand then. Your worst enemy wasn't so bad. The ants in the grass, they were just, doing their thing. Everything took on the rosy hue of unlimited success. You could do no wrong. And as long as it lasted, life was beautiful.
I don't feel the sickness yet, but it's in the post, that's for sure. I'm in the junkie limbo at the moment. Too ill to sleep, too tired to stay awake. But the sickness is on its way. Sweat, chills, nausea, pain and craving. Need like nothing else I've ever known will soon take hold of me. It's on its way.
Who you got green eyes? Who you got blue eyes? Who you got grey eyes? And I've never seen anyone quite like you before. No, I never met anyone.
Maybe I should go back to the clinic.
No clinics. No methadone.
I appreciate what you're trying to do, I really do, but I just need one more score, lately. Just bring me one more hit, please. I need one more fucking hit! You fuck!
Is he guilty or not guilty?
Ah! I want something!
He's our son.
Ah! 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 Stop! Stop!
The idea that anyone can use drugs and escape a horrible fate is anathema to these idiots.
My skin feels like jelly. I have a fucking migraine a mile long. I'm in no mood. I can't believe I'm actually doing this right now. I can do. I should go on America's Got Talent. Actually, I can do jumping jacks while sneezing, yawning, and shitting myself. It's a hell of a thing. Is my co-host with me? Are you there?
I'm here.
All right. So I guess we got a theme today, tonight, whatever.
Good evening and good morning.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, anytime you happen to be listening to this.
Good day.
Good day, good night. So, this is our Dopesick special. So, if you got any stories about being on any type of opiate withdrawal, we'd love to hear you, so call. Oh, wait, no, we don't have anybody able to call in. Never mind. But, you know what, that's okay.
We really shouldn't be up for this, but I mean, all options are open.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I get it right now. I'm in no mood. But you got to do what you got to do, right?
Yep.
I figure we don't even really need calls. Between the two of us, we probably got enough stories. Aren't you going to ask me how I'm doing?
Oh, you're doing fine. I can tell right now.
Oh, yeah.
That's a total lie, isn't it?
But, well, yeah. I mean, it tends to come in waves. See, at the moment, let's pull back the curtain a little bit. Tell the viewers exactly what's going on. See, I'm withdrawing from Suboxone, which isn't exactly as bad as withdrawing from the real deal. But they tend things to be go like in slow motion, you know. But it's not as bad. It's kind of like a soft version of it. I don't know how.
Softer version meaning what? It's it's not as bad of a hit.
Not really.
As if you were. Okay.
Well, I mean, what were you gonna say?
Well, if you were on the regular stuff and all of a sudden you came off of it, and then you would have, these major problems, and then now you're on this medication. I'll call it.
Right.
And you've been going through that for a while, and then all of a sudden now you come off of that. That's the same. You would have the same effect, or would it be a little bit easier?
It's kind of, well, you get like all the same symptoms, but they're kind of like in slow motion. I can't really put it any other way other than that. And you get it's not as harsh. It's like if you call.
I've seen effects.
I'll tell you.
And, like in certain movies and that kind of thing, and in people, that would say, that coming off the main thing would be a lot harsher.
I got a hot tag for that. What you just brought up. We're gonna bring up. What do you think the most accurate movie that had somebody withdrawing from drugs in it? Well, we can get to that later, but I wanted just to finish to answer your question. If you take like withdrawing from the actual real thing as like a real punch to the face, like a hard punch to the face, and withdrawing from Suboxone is more like just a hard slap, like an open hand slap, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense. I
mean, I can't really explain it better than that. You still get all the stuff, but it's like slower and more like it's duller. Not necessarily want to say soft necessarily, but duller.
When you say it feels dull, does that mean it takes longer?
Oh yeah.
Oh really? Okay.
Somebody told me that. Well, I heard that somebody took 4 days for them to fully withdraw off of it, or I don't know if it's
off of which
Suboxone, and I don't know if this person was weaning or anything, but I wasn't doing it at the time. I can't see that being a possibility now that I'm doing it on my own, from my own personal experience. But then again, everybody's different. But still, I mean, I think I'm in my 4th or 5th day now, and I don't see any, that I'm still in sort of a climbing. You get that adrenaline for no reason thing.
Right.
I don't know if that has to do with the receptor or.
It could have. I mean, to ask another question, if you were to say, how would you feel, like say 6 hours ago versus now? Does it change during the day, or is it always the same when you say the dull or in slow motion?
Yeah.
Is it always the same throughout the day, or does it regulate itself, or does you feel good moments and then severely bad moments?
Yeah, you could. That's pretty accurate. I feel there are moments that are worse than others. You kind of have to like do some like Jedi mind thing with yourself, to where if you're doing something or if you're focused on something, you tend to somehow, if you can get your mind off of it. Really, the thing that's the worst aspect of it is the can't sit still muscle spasm, like crank thing, like where all your muscles feel like you got like a.
And that would be constant, wouldn't it?
Yeah, generally it gets worse and worse. See, I find out this trick where I'm in a chair that swivels, so I just keep swiveling back and forth. Like I don't stop moving, especially like my hips. There's something to do with like the lower back that's really the worst.
What about if you're laying down?
No, I just don't lay down.
Right. Okay.
I was doing like touch your toes, that stretching earlier. Okay. That helped a little bit, but like I said, I was telling you earlier, I was on the bike for a little while earlier. That helped a little bit, but I don't know. There's no real secret to getting over this, unless
right.
Other than going.
So you just got to ride the wave, and then it'll just work itself out of you, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I mean, no success story. I mean, basically, you haven't had one yet.
No.
So
it's
you
fucked
don't know
up.
Anybody that's had one?
No,
that true?
well, no, I do. Well, I know of a person. It's more like a friend of a friend who says he got off of it. It took him 4 days to do that, but this same person is still using it here and there. So who knows if that's
Oh, all right.
true or
'Cause,
not.
I mean, a good success story would be somebody who has come off of it, even if, like you say, to wean or that kind of thing. But to know exactly what you're going through at the final moment. In other words, when you're over the plateau and you're past it, and like, where are you? That kind of thing.
Right. Well, it's kind of hard to judge it because you feel like as soon as you get a real grip on it, it gets worse. Or if you feel like you finally reached it, I think the worst thing to do in these situations is to try to track it in your mind how far you're gonna, what stage you're at. Because as soon as you think you know where you're at, something will happen that'll totally throw you off. Like you think you're at the peak of it, and then 12 hours later or 6 hours later, it's even worse. So, and then you have moments where it gets better. And you don't know why it gets better, and then you try to figure out, what did I do? Is there something I did in particular to make it better? And you can't really put a finger on that. So you just got to go with the general amount of time it takes, and then you're just pretty much up and down until that finally, I'm not really going to have a real answer until until it finally starts to really feel like it's going away, which it hasn't really yet, so.
Okay.
I can't say it's climbing still, but it's definitely not getting better.
But there is a supply available. In other words, if you had to go, if you reached a certain point where you couldn't survive it, then you do have, that is a backup plan, right?
Yeah, it's staring right at me. It doesn't really help, but I'm trying to avoid it.
Right.
But I don't know. I know that if I go back to it, it's just going to be a... And, with... I tell you... Oh, you know what? We should get into this, because, the whole reason why I got on in the first place is... I don't know if we got into this in the first show we did, but, the doctor I had that was prescribing me this had me on it for, and they doing this whole big story on them now, these like exposés on all these doctors that do this. But I had to pay him like $300 a month, which was $150 each time. I would see him every 2 weeks to give me a 2-week supply. They were like 8 milligram film to take one every 24 hours. I'm only supposed to, and really you're only supposed to be on this stuff for like 3 weeks to a month, because it has really, really, it really affects your serotonin levels, and it causes like a lot of depression, and you get a lot of mental problems if you stay on it longer than a couple of months. And he's had me on it for almost 2.5 years. So I'm kind of in the middle of suing him right now. So I want to get off of this. Basically, it's best that I get off of it as soon as possible to just help with the... It's really the only reason why I'm getting off of it, is because it's going to help the lawsuit. And...
So the physician that you had, I mean, did he prescribe you anything else, or was it just
he was giving me Xanax too. That's going to help the lawsuit too, because legally you can't do that, and also supposedly you can die from the combination. I want to say, not to sound insensitive, but there's a lot, who's dying from taking Xanax and Suboxone? I mean, it's just apparently
doesn't seem
people
possible,
have.
right?
It seems impossible to me. I mean, I've taken. Yeah. I mean, I've done enough of both at the same time to really disprove that theory, but evidently people have kicked the bucket in that combination. So
I wouldn't have thought it would have been possible.
Neither would I, but evidently it is. I mean, it's good for me, in the long run with this lawsuit, because, even more so, you put my life in danger. I got emotional distress, physical distress. I got, the list is just endless. I mean, and this guy's loaded, too. He's got, evidently, his daughter wanted to be some Bollywood singer or something. He's wasted $300,000 on trying to, get a career going for her. Meanwhile, he lives in this huge fucking like Indian gaudy mansion with like all of these little trinket things and just awful overpriced. You could tell he pays like 10 times what he should pay for just like shit that's like basically falling apart. He's got this huge.
So he isn't your normal down the road country doctor, is he?
No. He's a typical Indian pill mill, you know, sort of like, you know, script dealing. He's no different than a drug. You know, I knew a lot of, you know, truth be told, I knew a lot of drug dealers that were more compassionate than this guy, to be honest. I mean, there were times where he wouldn't be around on appointments, you know, and I'd have to go without for a few days until he finally got back from some whatever vacation he was on or something, you know.
It's a tough few days.
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, like you know, going back to the beginning of what we were talking about, it's not as bad as waiting for the real thing. You know, that experience is a little more grueling than this stuff, you know, because coming, like, you know, like I said, it's not as bad coming down.
And you've been under his care for how long?
2.5 years, almost.
That's a long time.
Yeah, especially when legally you're only allowed to be on it for a month, you know. I don't know how he gets away with it. That's why I want to get this suit out of the way as quick as possible, because you know somebody else is going to jump on it if I'm not, you know, quick about it. And there was another guy in the Jersey Shore who has been doing this for a long time, prescribing people, you know, like Adderall and Xanax and stuff, and he just retired because they were about to shut him down. So they're going after all these guys,
okay.
Yeah. So I kind of got a beat on how the government's going after this whole prescription drug thing. You know, like the last few years, I remember back in like 2012, 2011, it was like really easy to get like, I don't know about prescribing, but, you know, just to buy them off of, you know, like to buy them, I guess illegally you would say. It was pretty easy to find. They were pretty easy to come by. Then by like 2014, 2015, they got a little more scarce. They started to really go after these people for prescribing pain pills, and then it gave a huge surge in abuse of these anti-anxiety medications. So now they're going after these doctors who prescribe those, and so pretty much we're in the cycle now where we're in the middle of them shutting down all these anti-anxiety prescribing doctors and these pill mills that prescribe Xanax and benzo type drugs, or Adderall, like Ritalin type drugs that people are now abusing because they can't readily get.
Because you got to figure, like, where do they come from? I mean, they just can't manufacture them in somebody's basement, and they got to come from pharmaceutical places anyway, I would think.
Well, yeah, that's, you know.
If you shut that source down, you know, then you wouldn't have that available. You know, that kind of, you know, that would help with that, I would think.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it would. I mean, you know, it just sucks because there's a lot of people that need it. And there's also, you know, it's like people that go after guns and, you know, like.
Well, I think after reviewing somebody's medical record, I mean, that would establish whether the person would be ongoing as to need it or not. I mean, you know, you could pretty much tell as the frequency of the stuff going out on the street because of some idiot doctor that just wants to sell them or that kind of thing. And then it just stays out there and it becomes a market, you know, versus somebody who has a medical record who would need this stuff legitimately. You know, I mean, you could basically tell that. I mean, here he's going to stick to his normal, whatever the thing he's prescribed to do, the schedule. Mm-hmm. Of the dosage and that kind of thing, and he wouldn't be able to follow that, and you know that record would speak for itself.
Yeah.
You know, versus somebody who goes in there, I'm a physician, and I prescribe these things to 3,000 people, and I do it as frequent as possible. That would be a red flag, I would think.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much identifiable, I would assume. So that would be an easier thing to kick out. I would
But they tend to. Right? You're right. But they tend to cut off everybody. You know, like in.
Yeah, I know. That's the bad part.
Yeah.
Where all of a sudden nobody can do it anymore. And then that, makes it bad for the person who really needs it.
It's like these people who need
plays by the rules.
Yeah, like 10 years ago, you could stub your toe and get a script for like some Vicodin or something, or some Percocet, but
Yep.
I mean, which wasn't a good thing for everybody, but there's people that need that shit now that can't get it. And I remember, 5 years ago, they were really only prescribing it to like cancer patients.
Well, I'm sure they can work that out
And it's
because I mean, a person who legitimately would need it is also able to sue. So I mean,
For pain
here's
medication?
a person who's not abusing, but now he's being cut off because of this other issue, and that can't live. So I mean, I could see an attorney coming up after that too.
That's true, I guess. Yeah, if the person, who would he be suing though? The doctor?
You sue, yeah, you go right to the doctor, and the doctor cites a rule or cites I mean, what law was actually written that says? I mean, I don't think any law was written that says let's cut it off completely. Because what would the pharmaceutical companies do?
Right, they gotta have. So it's like it's like tobacco.
Problem.
Like they gotta have a way to, get it in
But
there
if a
somehow.
doctor turns around and says I'm not in the pain management business anymore, then okay, well then he doesn't prescribe any of that to anyone anymore. So he loses that patient, and then he loses 100 more.
Right.
It's not going to be good for him.
No, but then he's also gotta. He play by these new.
I think that stuff still lives. I think the market still lives out there for people who don't abuse it, and those records speak for themselves.
Right. I just.
Yeah, I mean, if I was under somebody's care collecting prescriptions like that under a normal circumstance, then and then all of a sudden because of some other issue I wasn't able to receive this, I'd have an attorney on it within a second.
Right. I mean, I think anybody.
Everybody else is doing that too.
I just didn't. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if how. I mean, that seems like. I just never thought of it like that. That you could actually.
That makes sense, I would think, right?
Yeah, it does make sense, but I don't know if it would be. It would just be such a. You talk about like suing doctors and stuff like because they can't. I guess it would all depend on the condition. I guess, like you were saying.
Right. Well, first of all, they have to identify the law that was written, and I don't see any law that was written.
I mean, I don't have it.
Stops the prescription flow.
Well, I mean, I don't have like
because then if that happened, if the law was written, the pharmaceutical companies would have a big issue with that. Because now we can't manufacture it. Now we can't. That would be a huge problem because insurance companies pay off big. They pay off big, and they subsidize doctors and that kind of thing all over the country for all this stuff, or they wouldn't be making it.
Right.
They wouldn't be manufacturing this stuff. They just wouldn't do it. They just have to do something with your record keeping and figure out that this person is legitimate. He's a legitimate patient. And this is how it's going to work. If the thing on the bottle says you take one every 6 hours or that kind of, if you abuse that, then you have an issue that supports whatever was written. Okay? And then you would be fighting a larger battle, I would think. But if you were a person who followed those rules based on what was written for you to do as a direction, then that would be a different issue, and you can't stop that person from collecting it.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So it's all got to do with how you keep a personal record on a patient. And if that doesn't interfere with whatever pseudo law was written, which I doubt anyone was ever written.
Well, I mean, I know I don't have it in front of me of the laws or whatever and how they or whatever bills are being pushed. But you just know from the harsher, just the more difficult ways of obtaining them today. I mean, it's like you can't. 5 years ago you had to have cancer to get any type of pain pill. Now it's like I think they've gotten even more stricter beyond that. But then at the same time, they got this whole fentanyl thing. I mean, I don't know who the reason for even inventing that. I don't buy
That's something I don't understand at all. I mean, that whole fentanyl thing, I never did understand that.
And the fact,
if you're a dope dealer and you're out there on the street doing whatever you're doing, and you're selling, why would a dope dealer actually mix fentanyl with heroin? I mean, why would that
It's
even
cheaper.
happen? I mean, you're going to ruin your clientele.
Well, a lot of them, you're not dealing with obviously like the smartest, sharpest knives, and
Obviously not. No.
but but no, they it's a lot. Evidently, I don't know how this happens or it ends up like this, but it seems like it's incredibly more available and way cheaper for them to
What is?
obtain fentanyl.
Okay.
I mean, it just seems that way to me because they mix it with it. Everybody mixes it with the stuff now. It's very, very rare to if you're buying any type of heroin for it to not be mixed with it. And they do a lot of this like reefer madness type propaganda about fentanyl, that it's like 100 times more powerful and in one hit it'll kill you and all this stuff, which is obviously
You
not
think it
true.
is?
No, not at all. I don't think
Okay.
I think it's almost on the same severity, or not severity, but like the same potency as like a Dilaudid or a morphine. In fact, I think it's more of like a morphine type of drug, because every time I did fentanyl or knew I was doing a dope that I knew had fentanyl in it, I would get the same symptoms that you would get from like a morphine drip or something. Like you would get that real flushed, itchy feeling, and with straight dope you don't get that. You just don't get itchy or flushed out, like where your face gets red and your skin gets red and you feel all hot and sort of, when you got really pure good stuff, it's like, you'll get nauseous if you do too much, or you'll get like your basic symptoms of indulging in that, but you won't get like that flushy morphine itchy feeling. And that fentanyl always seemed to do that. So I always felt like it was more of like a derivative of morphine, which means it's nowhere near as potent as people are saying it is. I think that's just propaganda to scare kids into, rightfully so, to not get them to be heroin addicts, But unfortunately, they shut down the whole availability for them to, socially indulge in prescription pills, because they put so much. Someone put so much restrictions on them that that's all they have
Well,
to.
what restrictions did they actually put on them?
Well, it's what we were talking about earlier. You can't
Yeah.
you can't go to a hospital right now and try to get, for anything, and try to get a Vicodin or prescription.
Okay, so a specific physician would only be available to prescribe that. Not every physician would be able
No,
to.
no, they're all eligible to do that. That
Okay.
any physician, MD, whatever, who deals in pain management, can prescribe painkillers like Percocet and Vicodin, but they have all these restrictions now where there's a lot of eyes on them, a lot of legal eyes on them. So, you have to almost have your head cut off to get a prescription, especially if you're, under a certain age, because they always assume just because of how old you are, you're in a category. They think if you're a little older, it's like, easier to obtain it because you're less likely to abuse it, because you're not this generation that's on the front page of the paper and all this shit. But it's all like a political thing. I mean, I agree with you that there's
I
nothing.
think what it does to the patient clientele is that it just tells the physician that I can search out more about the patient. In other words, when I go and I take a patient's information, I look at the certain things that'll pop up that'll be like red flags that would automatically tell the physician that this person has abused this in the past. So he's got a record doing this, or he's been either caught with something at one time. I think the physicians are more available to the patient's personal history.
Well, no,
To give them
legally,
because I think it's still an area where you need some kind of medication here that's going to be a controlled substance, and we have to go into your little history a little bit deeper to find out if you're able to accept this or not. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that gets the doctor off the hook, as far as like any kind of, if they would come after him for anything. Because I think that's where the pharmaceutical companies
Well, that's for the argument.
line, where, we can't just write a law and say, forget it. You just can't, because, then they wouldn't be manufacturing this stuff, and that would be a big problem.
Right. But
because, you talk about this stuff. What's the name of it? Fentanyl?
Yeah.
All right. So if that stuff's out in the market and pharmaceutical companies are manufacturing this stuff, and so they got to figure, well, if we cut everybody off, then there's no point in manufacturing it anymore. It's just going to be, it's a lost market.
Right, but I mean, I understand. I mean, I agree with that, but it's still almost impossible to get it prescribed, and particularly. And it's,
I think so. I think you're correct there. It's you can't initially just walk in there and say I need it. No, you have to go through more of
you gotta be near death.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be the same.
I never even knew. I didn't know that it was pill form. I always thought it was just a patch.
What, fentanyl?
That's the only thing I ever saw. Yeah, I never knew it was.
No. I'm talking about like, just your standard oxycodone type pills.
Oh, you mean the stuff that's been around for a while?
Yeah, like.
Oh yeah, okay.
That's what's and that's why it's kind of annoying when you turn on the news, and they say there's an opiate or opioid. Do you ever hear that term now? Opioid? They say that now instead of opiate?
Yeah, instead of opiate.
They say opioid.
Yeah,
what
I guess
is the
opioid
difference?
Means everything. Opiate means specific medication. I don't know.
I don't know either. I don't know why if it's like the French.
You're writing a movie, you should know all these resources, that kind of thing. So you
some
don't
things just can't
on it during a review.
Well, some things just can't be explained. I don't know. I've actually tried to figure that out, and I can't get like a straight answer. I'm really
I can't help you there. I don't know. I don't know where the rule sits. I don't know like where it actually starts and stops. I know what the argument would be. Because I can have plenty of argument, but I mean the thing is that I don't know where the rule is because I don't know what actually has been established or not. I mean, you say you can't walk into a hospital and automatically get it, where 10 years ago you probably could have.
Not even 10, but
you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I mean, the word opiate itself isn't even that old for it to change, take on a new form.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, I was gonna say it's annoying to me to you turn on the news and they talk about it like every day now. But they say that it's they got the opioid crisis and kids are taking. Kids aren't taking. This isn't 5-10 years ago. They're not taking pills anymore. They're if they're on an opiate drug, they're taking heroin. That's what it is. But nobody wants to say that. They got Narcan in pharmacies for like over the counter here now. I'm sure they got it there too. It's become like a nation. It's a federal. It's federalized now that you have to have Narcan over the counter to, bring. You're not gonna need Narcan for prescription pills. There's just not because There's no amount to take that's gonna warrant an overdose that severe that where you're gonna need a drug like Narcan to bring you back to life. It's just not gonna, So these kids at the news are talking about these young people or people in general that are having a part of this opiate crisis are heroin addicts. They're not pill poppers. They're not taking pills. They may have started out that way, as most of us have, but it's not. It's formed into a heroin problem, not a pill problem, because they took the pills away.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's like they there's no pills to take because there's so many restrictions on getting them prescribed to you now that there's not enough to go around to where there could even be an epidemic for that.
Right.
So it's just there's 100 times more heroin out now on around, and not even a fraction of the amount of pain pills around. So I mean, you do the math on what the real,
That's a pretty
problem
simple
is.
equation.
Yeah.
I can see where that's going. Right.
So why can't they just say what it is on the news? It's like I don't understand why they're, playing with people. I think that's where honestly, now that I think about it, I think that's where the term opioid comes in. Even though it doesn't really it's not really a connection with why that represents what heroin. But I feel like they're saying
Does
that
that
because they
group
don't want to.
everything when you say opioid? Does that mean that
I don't know.
we're going from the gateway to the real thing?
I don't know. I have no idea, and I
They just
really
group it
tried
all
to figure it
together?
out.
I don't know.
It could be. I have no
Yeah.
idea. I tried to figure that out, but I couldn't come up with anything that where there's one means one thing and another means something else, and it just seems to all mean the same thing. But I just I don't know why they just don't say what it is,
Right. Right.
But you did.
Well,
I wanted to bring this,
they're still trying to fight the invisible war anyhow. So
which they'll never win. It's gonna get worse and worse. It's like
of course.
it's like the whole meth, the amphetamine thing. I mean, there wouldn't be meth if they didn't crack down on the whole cocaine problem from 30 years ago. I mean, there was
Right.
that biker crank, but that was like sort of a niche-y. People were terrified of methamphetamine back in the day.
Right.
Because you didn't never
Right.
know, it was like a bouillabaisse of all kinds of what crack ended up being, which was like just a mix of all kinds of weird shit that got you like gasoline, and it was like a weird hillbilly concoction, like a narcotic moonshine thing that you didn't know whether it was going to bring you up or down, or
It's all politics now. I mean, most of the drugs you're talking about were legal here at one time.
Yeah.
I mean, cocaine was in everything 100
Mhm.
years ago. Heroin was around 100 years ago. It
You know
was
who
legal.
invented
LSD
heroin?
was legal in the 50s
Yeah,
until 1966.
right.
And who's the actor? What was Cary Grant? Was
Did
on
they-
LSD for 9 years.
Cary Grant, you think it's Steve McQueen?
No, I'm thinking. I know for a fact, Cary Grant. You can look it up right now. He was doing LSD for 9 years, and he was very positive with it.
Well, I never knew that.
He loved it. Yep. He
Wow,
took
that's
it for
crazy.
9 years. He was.
Well, you never would
it was
think
in a
that.
supervised thing, under. What do you call those guys?
Was it that
a
MK
psychoanalyst.
Oh,
And you were under his supervision, okay? He just
Yeah, they
didn't buy it
used
out
to
the
do
street or
that.
that kind of thing.
Right.
No, it was done very, very legally.
They did that with ecstasy too in the beginning.
Really?
Yeah, back in the late 70s, ecstasy.
What
was
is
a-
ecstasy anyway?
I guess it's they call it MDMA. I don't know what that stands for, but it's like a drug that's
Me either.
it's like it's kind of like an hallucinogen, but it's like it just makes you really happy and euphoric, but not like opiates do. It's like I don't know. It's like like a sense.
This is ecstasy you're talking about.
Yeah, it's like a sense.
Okay.
It's like a sense enhancer. It's like it enhances your senses to a point where kind of like the way LSD did, but in a more like warm, sort of fuzzy, happy.
I don't even know what LSD is. I mean, that's all I know is it's they find it on paper. I mean, I guess it's attached to some kind of paper.
Well, because it's liquid. I mean, they have to take a drop of liquid and put it on a piece of paper.
Well, that makes sense. Okay, I keep thinking of like a film or something like that.
Yeah, that's what
or
it is. Yeah.
A specific kind of paper.
Yeah, that's what it. Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
But-
and then Cary Grant of all people.
I
he
never
was,
would have thought that. I never.
9
would've guessed
years.
that. Wow.
And he enjoyed every moment. And until they made it illegal in 1966, and then he didn't do it anymore. Didn't have any issue coming off of it.
Well,
He just voiced his opinion that it was one of the best things that ever happened to him.
Well, that was like that was a
You're
great
talking
time.
9 years.
Right.
So
Well, that was a
not
time
knowing exactly what it is. I have no idea what it is. But it's like, Jesus, what the hell was it? But no, he had a very positive experience, and and he was much older then. He was in his 60s.
Well, they give there's a treatment out there that when people are of terminal cancer, they give them psilocybin mushrooms to and it gets it takes away their fear of death, and it has tremendous results and stuff.
I would say that probably exists in hospice care and most of your morphine drips and that kind of stuff, towards the end of your life. Yeah.
Yeah, there was
like your grandmother the same way. When I discovered her in that state, she was definitely already there,
Right.
And,
there.
Yeah.
But, you'll get a kick out of this. As far as, them making all those, like, LSD type drugs illegal. I think it was just over proliferation. What was his name? Michael McKean, in a documentary, he said if you took LSD in the 60s, you were guaranteed to have a religious experience. But if you took LSD in the 70s, you were just loaded. Yeah, so I think, people just did too much, and it became too much of the... That's my opinion. Obviously, I wasn't there just to really, but at the same time, looking back...
Yeah, but if you get a moment, or if you're by the computer screen now, you can actually look it up, and it's got a whole paragraph there in Wikipedia on his LSD experience.
Wow, I never would have thought... I never would guess to him.
No, I never did either. I just stumbled on it, and I was shocked when I read that. But, not only him, it was Groucho Marx.
Yeah, I did know about that.
Yeah, and who was the other one? Of course, Timothy Leary. We all know about Timothy Leary.
He was like the guru, LSD guru guy.
Yeah, the guru. But there was another guy. I can't think of.
Steve McQueen did for a few years.
Rod Steiger.
Wow, really?
Yeah, you can read up on him. He had a lot of bouts with depression and that kind of thing. So he had some issues in the later part of his life, and then he went into this LSD therapy too.
Oh, wow.
And apparently it was common. I never even knew it existed. And there they were under, of course, supervision. And they were getting this kind of treatment, however they were going through it or how they ever, went through it. And you went and you saw this psychoanalyst, and he put you through a session and incorporated this in your thing.
Wow.
And I can't tell you how long it lasted. They never talk about that.
You mean like the drug when you take it?
Day, I have no idea. But his experiences were over 100 for Cary Grant.
Yeah, that's a lot of people say. Like John Lennon said he, dropped acid, but like 1,000 times or something like that. And
is that what LSD is? Acid?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's what we knew what it was like in the 70s. It was like acid.
Yeah.
Right.
And then they started with like pill. They used to put them in the capsules, I guess, and then they switched to the film paper.
Does it still exist?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's not as obviously popular, but yeah, it's still around. That's like with ecstasy, it's still around. It's not as popular, but when
like under supervised care, you think that kind of treatment would still exist? I mean, what substituted it? I mean, what if it was such a
they outlawed it when it.
Thing.
Well,
yeah,
I'll tell you.
It, but for what reason?
Well, the story of ecstasy will answer that question perfectly because it started out as a legal medication that doctors. Some guy made it back in the mid 70s. Some guy from Sweden or something, and before they could. It wasn't even FDA approved, so it was like under that holistic category of stuff to take. So it was like almost like treated like a supplement. And psychiatrists grabbed it and started using it like the way you're talking about with Cary Grant's doctor. They were giving it as part of like hypnotherapy, and they were using it and getting really good results. The results were so good that they started prescribing their patients to take outside of the sessions, and so they would take them all the time, and then that's where and they felt so good on it, and it became such a that people started ordering them from overseas. Huge manufacturing of it started to take place, and people enjoyed it so much that they would start like juice bars would turn into clubs. Like, they didn't have liquor license, but people would come on ecstasy, and that's how the rave scene started. Because once they outlawed ecstasy and made it illegal, they had to, all these parties where people would take ecstasy and dance and have, go crazy, had to go like underground, and that's how. And by like the mid '80s, '90s, the whole rave thing happened because they made ecstasy illegal. But for about 5-10 years, it was illegal medication that psychiatrists used to prescribe patients. That and it turned into like this huge aphrodisiac towards like going out and like it was like
life.
Yeah, like it was like a new form of like how cocaine was big in like cocaine and disco and all that shit. It was kind of like that. It went along with it turned into like a party drug. It started out as a treatment for depression by psychiatrists, and it turned into this party drug. And I guess maybe they had a few instances where people overdosed or something, and then they made it illegal, and that's when, like I said, the whole rave thing happened after that.
Right.
But it had a huge resurgence in the last 10 years. They extracted the real, like the pure form of it. They call it Molly. And that became really big. I don't know if it's really as big now, but it was for about the last 10 years. It got really big. But I think
Molly was what, something that was
part
something
ecstasy.
and part something.
Yeah,
it wasn't.
Well, it turned into that because people,
I see.
Drug dealers used to cut it with all kinds of stuff. That's like they used to have these charts, with ecstasy pills that they'd press. You used to take a little, you would like chip a little piece of the pill, and you put it in this liquid, and whatever color the liquid turned into was whatever the pill was cut with, because that's how dangerous the ecstasy pills were starting to become. Because I remember the only ecstasy pills I ever bought. I had one that I never even took. It's still in that dresser that's probably at the house. It's in one of the drawers. It's a little yellow pill with a Batman logo on it. And I never took that one because I took one that was purple right before that, and it wasn't ecstasy at all. It was just like speed. So they mix speed with it. Sometimes they'll mix heroin with it. Sometimes they'll mix, because all they got to do is press a pill and put a little goofy logo on it, and people think it's ecstasy. That's what ended up happening. That's why the popularity went down, because people started to. That's the fucked up thing. That's probably why a lot of these drugs get shut down when there's a good cause in the beginning, is because when drug dealers get a hold of them, all they'll do is say it's one thing when it's not, and then the news and the police, they don't know no better, so they think this is what's killing people, and it's not. It's a cheap ripoff with the things that are cut with it that's killing people, not the thing itself. And that's where the real confusion happens.
Well, also a push to make attorneys rich.
Yeah.
If we make this totally illegal, you're talking about something that was totally available at one time and under complete supervision of a physician, and was very effective. Now, why would you make that illegal? Why wouldn't you just maybe
regulate it?
Restrictions on the supervision part, that kind of thing, and enhance it a little better and still make it available. I mean, why would it be totally illegal?
Well, I don't know.
That's the thing I never understood.
Well, there's so many motives.
That was originally brought to the people under complete supervision and had a very good effect for medication reasons and for any kind of therapy. And it worked out very well. I mean, it's not like, I don't think heroin ever supported anybody's therapy. I think it was
no, it did.
Found, used, and it did?
Well, yeah, you know who invented it?
Who?
The Bear. The Bear Aspirin Company.
Oh, Bayer.
Bayer,
Oh.
yeah, Bayer.
Okay.
Because I guess people got addicted to morphine. There's a big morphine problem back in the...
Morphine was a big problem 100 years ago, yeah.
and
Yeah.
so they created this... it was actually a woman...
Which was also legal. And that was
Yeah.
very legal. You could buy it anywhere. And cocaine was a byproduct that you found in every product that was on the shelf.
They used to sell them, yeah. They
They
gave
used cocaine
kids,
more than they did asbestos.
Yeah, they gave them to kids for toothaches and because it was a numbing
Yeah.
agent.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
know.
it was in everything. It was a byproduct.
It was a
you know.
special time.
The what?
It's a special, beautiful, special time.
Yeah. But, yeah, but I mean, you're talking like LSD or that kind of thing. You're talking about something that was a perfect therapy. And they, you know,
See,
to
when-
outlaw it like the way they did, I just never saw this unless all the attorneys got together and said, we need to get rich.
Well,
So
I
if we
think
arrest a bunch of people on it, then, you know, we'll end up getting rich.
there was that was part of it. The other part of it too is that you really weren't getting the real thing. It's like any drug. It started to get cut with a lot of
Dangerous?
things, and yeah, it wasn't the pure thing anymore. When it was like in the 60s when they used to give it away, it was like a social statement. It was like you know, so you were pretty much getting the cleanest, purest form of it, but
Yeah.
by the time it became a money making thing, that's when you started to get cheap imitations, and that's what started to, you know, it became a problem.
Rip-offs, stuff
Yeah.
like that, right?
That's what
Yeah.
would give people horrible bad trips. They would say, you know, where horrible experiences because whatever it was cut with gave them,
Okay.
you know, bad. You know, that's when it became like a menace to people. But only
Okay.
after, you know, it became like a money thing. You know, like all drugs. You know, they just step on it over and over again to make money,
Right.
like they do with heroin today. You know.
They made marijuana legal, so I mean, but then again, it doesn't that have a byproduct in it that's you don't find in the regulatory market, like the what is that? The THC or whatever
Yeah,
it's called?
THC,
TCH, I don't know.
THC.
Yeah, so I mean, that's not in the regulatory market, is it? They don't have that in there.
Well,
In
what do you
some
mean?
areas. I'm not saying all areas, but you know.
Well, I know Denver, obviously, and California. It's pretty much legal all the way around. You know, you
So if I went to Denver, Colorado, I would find THC
yeah,
in the marijuana.
yeah,
Oh, all right.
yeah. You could have you know, any type of I don't know as far as Colorado, the whole state. I don't know. I'm not 100%, but I know Denver, it's 100% legal. You can have up to like 10 plants. So you can grow your own weed. You can smoke it anywhere.
Well, with all these changes coming on, you want to get your research straight because you are writing the movie. So you
Yeah.
want to make sure
Well,
that's
you
all
know,
accurate.
Right. Well, I'm not writing. Yeah. I feel like the weed movie genre, whatever, is a little overplayed. You know, and
You
not
think
very
so?
relevant. I think so. Yeah, and not really relevant to today. I think.
Right.
You know. So. But that's speaking of movies. I wanted to ask you, what do you think the most accurate? You know, movie with the most accurate opiate withdrawal, heroin withdrawal scenes in it were? Because there are a lot of ones that they, you know, they like to.
Well, I would say Drugstore Cowboy.
There was
Um,
Oh, okay. That was a very realistic
that had a
movie.
scene, right? Is that the
Um,
one you showed me the one time?
I don't know if there was. I think you're thinking of a different
You
one.
and I watched it one time. Oh, I don't think I'm accurate on that.
It was a very realistic movie, though. But
Which one? Yeah, it was. But I mean, do you remember which one had more of a
I'm trying to
accuracy to that?
Well, there was. I mean, the obvious one. You know, Train Spotting. Had a
I never
pretty,
saw that one.
That had a pretty. You should watch that. That's Requiem for a Dream.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I forgot about that one. Yeah.
That's got to be the most realistic. It's not even a fun movie to. I mean, none of these movies, but that's not even a movie. It's like a movie you watch once and you try to forget about it.
Right.
When I was 18, and when that was when I first watched it, and all I ever did was smoke a little weed, at 18, took, some Vicodin, and, it's like a joke, like, I can count on the hand, how many times I went by the time I was 18. But when I watched that movie, I was never physically addicted to anything, and I could barely get through that movie then. Watching that now is like impossible. I can't even, it's really just an impossible. It's just very, very realistic, too realistic. As a matter of fact,
too close to home.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. And there was 4 stories in there, really 3 stories, because there's 2 characters that pretty much do the same thing, but there's 3 stories separate that are going on all at the same time in Requiem for a Dream, and they have the Ellen Bernstein's character. She plays this kid's mother, and her character's struggle is, if you're just a regular square person, whatever, is the most easily sympathetic, because she gets addicted to these diet pills, and meanwhile her kid's a heroin addict, and his girlfriend's a heroin addict, and his best friend's a heroin addict, and it's very if you're not affiliated with hard drugs, it's hard to feel bad for those people, but for some reason you could never do a drug in your life, and still that Ellen Bernstein's character is so heartbreakingly sympathetic in that. Maybe because she just gets prescribed something from a regular doctor, and it was just something that could happen to anybody, is what happened with her. And also just her performance is just, I can't believe that that just went, under the radar of most critics and people.
So what you're saying is that the person's character was so sympathetic to the point where this is a person who was basically cheated.
Yeah, all she wanted to, they were doing what they were doing to get high. They knew exactly what they were doing, but she was doing what she was doing because she wanted to be thin, and she wanted to not, to better her life, and she thought she was bettering her life by taking these pills because the doctor told her that's what, you need to do to better your life. She became a junkie unknowingly. And what happens to her at the end of the movie is what happens to everybody. That's
the sympathetic part.
Yeah,
where now you can feel that you're your person already established. This person's been cheated, and most anybody can identify with that.
Right. And the rest of them knew what they were doing, but she was just sort of led into this, thinking it was it was okay. There was nothing wrong with it. She didn't know what she was doing. The other 3 knew exactly what they were doing. So it was kind of hard to feel, even though it's so over the top what happens to these people, but it happens every day to people. What happens to these characters at the end, but still in a movie. If I made that movie, it would have been so not. Every word of that book, Herbert Selby Jr.'s book, is in that movie, which is really amateuristic. Like a great example of how to really adapt a book into a movie is a movie that came out the same year as Requiem for a Dream, which was American Psycho. I don't know if you ever saw it.
Oh, yeah.
That's a great...
Yeah, I remember that one.
That's a great movie and a great adaptation of a really good book. And, just as a quick example, he's got these Christian Bale's character. He's got these 2 hookers in his room, and everybody's going at it. And then they're about to leave. They're about to get dressed and leave, and they're asking for the money. All of a sudden, he takes out a coat hanger, and he bends the coat hanger, and he goes, "Oh, we're not finished yet." And then it just cuts to them all beaten and bruised and leaving and taking their money and leaving. It just cuts to them. But in the book, if you read the book, it goes into graphic detail what he does to them with the coat hanger. Darren Aronofsky did none of that in Requiem for a Dream. He showed you every single little thing. Like if the guy that made Requiem for a Dream made American Psycho, he would have showed the audience exactly what Christian Bale did with the coat hanger, and that's not good filmmaking. Because a book is just words. You know, it's
How many years apart are those two films?
They came out the same year.
They did?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
In 2000.
Which one was first?
I don't know.
Requiem for a Dream would be the first one, right?
I don't know. They came out the same year, so I can't. I don't know like what day they came out.
I mean, for both films that came out the same year, there must have been some push, some political push that would make that happen.
No, I think.
Would that be like 98 or 99?
What?
Those two movies?
No, they both
American
came out in
Psycho
2000.
and,
They both came out in
Requiem?
2000, dude. They both came out
What
in
year?
2000.
Oh, okay.
He's like trying to trip me up like I'm lying.
No. I was just trying to figure, like, what was going on at that time.
Oh no, it was what's his name? The guy that wrote Less Than Zero wrote American Psycho.
Right.
It came out in like the book came out in like 89 or something. It's a great book about the 80s. Probably the best book about the 80s.
Oh, okay.
And then Requiem for a Dream, Herbert Selby Jr. wrote that in like the 60s. He had a horrible story. You know, he went cold turkey off heroin, strapped to a bed in an insane asylum in Bellevue. Because, you know, in those days, they didn't know how to handle all that shit. I don't even think they had
Wow.
methadone yet. That was, early 60s.
How long did that take him?
I'm assuming a few days.
I just can't imagine.
No, neither can I. And, you know, he's got a hell of a story. You know, he had tuberculosis as a kid, and they had to, like, take out, like, most of his ribs, and then they thought he was going to die. He had to go into one of those old-fashioned, what were those things called? They were like boy.
Some kind of clinic?
No. They were like contraptions that you had to like. They breathed for you, like like blowing the plastic bubble, like those things that like those things that you had that they would put, like it was like a bed. It was like a coffin type thing that you had to, it would like breathe for you. I don't know.
Oh, I know what you mean.
You know what I'm talking about,
I can't think of what that is either.
But the kids with the TB, they'd have to put him in those. He was in there. They thought he was gonna die. They took out a lot of his organs, and then he survived and grew up by the time. And then he was drafted into World War II, and you know, had to go through that. And then after all that, you know, he saw a lot of his buddies, you know, get killed in the war and everything. And then by like the early 50s, or no, I'm sorry, when he got shot a couple times during the war, and then he got addicted to morphine in the hospital, in the military hospital. And then by the time he got back to New York, he you know, had a morphine addiction, turned into a heroin addiction in the 50s, when heroin was like huge in the 50s, with the whole beatnik, you know, with Burroughs, and because Herbert Selby knew Burroughs and Ginsberg and all those guys who used to hang out in the when the Village was like, you know, the Village, you know, and they would, you know, walk their dogs and write poetry and shoot heroin, you know, like pretty much every day. And then a lot of them died broke, like, you know, Burroughs died broke, and Herbert Selby died with a little bit of money, but I don't think he cared. You know, none of those guys really cared about any of that stuff anyway.
Right.
I don't even think they cared whether they wrote or not. It was just something they did just to do it because they weren't doing anything else. They're very, like, nihilistic personalities.
Right. How long did he live till?
Which one? Herbert Selby?
Yeah, Selby.
I think he died in 2006 or something.
Did he ever beat the problem, or did he just go all the way through it?
No, he beat it. Apparently, like, he got clean in don't know how long he was. I don't know when exactly he got. I mean, I know he got clean in the. I want to maybe I think he did get clean like in the 50s, and then he was done.
Oh, okay.
I think. I'm not 100%
But
sure.
you were talking about movies that had
He wrote like Last Exit
more
to
of
Brooklyn.
for the withdrawal and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And which movie would you think had the best?
Oh God, I would say. Requiem for a Dream had the most realistic, in terms of like, but realistic in terms of like watching a clock tick, like it was like almost like real time. I think Trainspotting, people laugh at that,
Right.
because they think it's over the top, but they're not understanding that they're taking 5 days of horrible withdrawal and scrunching it into a 4-minute sequence. So I think that if they looked at it that way, they would understand why that scene is so severe. And I would probably put that as the best portrayal of that. Because when people forget they're watching art sometimes when they're looking at something that's real, portrayed on screen, they're forgetting that it's also a form of art. And so
you're right. They do take a very artistic view. Once they start to feel it,
yeah,
and all of a sudden they get defensive inside, and it goes right to something artistic.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I hear that. What about Basketball Diaries?
That was good.
Did that have anything?
That was all right. I mean, I think that there was so much happening in that they didn't put it could have been. It could have been better. It was like that movie Candy. I don't know if you've seen it. It was a movie like.
I remember the movie. Yeah, I do remember it.
They tried really hard in that for it to look.
There's another movie there too. What was it? Spun. Remember Spun?
Oh yeah, that was the name of. Yeah. With Brittany Murphy. Yeah.
John Leguizamo was in it.
Yeah, Brittany Murphy was in there. Yeah, I remember that. That wasn't bad, but I wouldn't put that like as like all time most.
No, it doesn't really get too much with the withdrawal thing. They're more or less like drug dealers and the market and that kind of thing. It was one of those.
It's hard to do. Unless you lived through it, it's hard to portray it.
You're right. You have to live through it.
Even
to
the actors.
Get a good, and you really have to know like what it is to actually be able to portray it.
Yeah. That's why I think so many heroin.
It's a scary thing. Yeah.
That's why. Yeah, I think so many movies with heroin in them, you don't see a lot of withdrawal scenes because it's very difficult to portray.
Right. And it's such a guilty pleasure, where you just sit there and actually, if you were going to be a 500% performer or something like that, it would automatically be established that you were definitely one of these people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if people want to go that far, and
Panic in Needle Park.
Be that truthful with it,
Right. Panic in Needle Park, I thought was another really good, realistic one.
Did that have a good scene for like withdrawal? Panic in Needle Park? That was the Al Pacino movie, right?
Yeah.
That was like 40 years ago.
I would put him as one of the all-time. That's another good question. Who do you think played like the most realistic, good portrayal of like a heroin addict? I would put him up there as like one of the best. I don't think there were really like good. I don't think there were full-fledged withdrawal scenes in that, like there would be like in Trainspotting. But
right, they weren't like scenes. They were in a Panic in Needle Park had like moments.
Yeah.
Where. You knew that the person was going through this, so that.
Oh yeah.
And then all of a sudden, the next scene, he's all fixed up. So.
Exactly. Like, remember the scene where Al Pacino can't find his the shit that what's his name left for him, and the girls still
supposed to be in the mailbox or something.
yeah, and it's under the garbage can. He thinks he beat him and doesn't. He stole it on him, and that was such a real moment, such a real. Such a real acting job he did in that scene.
Right.
I would put him there.
Yeah, it was very well played.
Yeah. It's a little cartoony, but Ewan McGregor in Trainspotting was good. I would put him up there. you know, I don't know. I mean, who else would I would? There was I don't know if you've ever seen Killings. Have you ever seen Killing Zoe, the movie?
No.
You got to see this movie. It's about these guys. They kill. They rob a bank. It's a French movie. The guy that co-wrote Pulp Fiction with Tarantino, this guy Roger Avery, he made the movie, and
Right.
it's about these French. This Eric Stoltz is in it. He plays a safe cracker, and
Okay.
he grew up with this guy, this French guy, who's his name, the actor who played. It's like one of the greatest performances I've ever seen anybody. What's this guy's name? His name is Jean Hughes Inglade, or something like that. I can't pronounce his name, but
Anglade.
Inglade, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But he is so good in this. He plays a really good heroin addict in that movie. But that you gotta see that movie. That's a great movie. And just for his performance alone, it's a movie that like really stays with you, you know, a little bit because it's so intense. But you know, and like he just not like he's Eric Stoltz shows up the night before they rob the bank, and then they go out, they do a bunch of drugs, and but the way that it's shot and the way that Eric Stoltz meets all of this guy's friends and how they interact with them, and he makes Eric Stoltz snort a little heroin like so before they go out, and just the whole that whole night before they rob the bank is a really hard thing to put on the screen. How what's his name shot all that. It seems like it's just a goofy, kind of weird, creepy way of shooting a scene. But it's stuff like that's very, very difficult to pull off in a movie. But you should check that out. Killing Zoe, that's a really good one. And
I've heard of the movie. I've heard of it. This is like the
it didn't really
like
get
around 1995, 1996.
Yeah, 94, 95, something like that.
Okay, yeah.
But it really
I do remember the movie.
There were so many of those type of movies that came out then because of Tarantino that it sort of got swept under the rug a little bit.
Right.
There were so many movies with guns and guys in suits and all that shit in the 90s because of Pulp Fiction, but it should have got more acclaim because it really was really, really better than how it was received. But who do you think overrated drug actors who played drug addicts were?
Wow. An overrated drug addict.
Where you watch, you're like, oh my god, like, you know, it's just no.
Like, stop it already.
Yeah.
I think anything that John Travolta would do.
Oh yeah. Then
that would be overrated. I think anything. Who was the
I'll
guy
tell you
from
what though. I
Twister?
gotta say, can I stop you real quick?
Yeah.
You just put me on. That reminds. He did play a great heroin addict in Pulp Fiction though.
Did he?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think it was him that made him look like I think it was a lot of that was Tarantino. Like when you see him in the car, he's so on heroin in that car. When I mean, not for real, but like, you know, in playing the character, he is so.
I never would have got that.
But just when you see that you saw Pulp Fiction, right?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
But I never would have known that he was on heroin.
But they do the close-ups of him opening the bag and cooking the spoon.
Yeah, I guess.
But when you watch the scene and they see him when he's driving the car, I mean, I guess the rest of the movie he's not really. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of average his portrayal of like a heroin addict. But when he's driving the car, he's so loaded on heroin. It's like such a you know, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't look at the guy as being realistic in anything. So I guess I'm automatically turned off.
Do you see these?
By what he does.
Not to get off topic, but I have to ask you about that John Gotti movie he put out.
Yes.
Did you see any ads for
The
that.
scenes that they showed in the clip that you gave me really wasn't enough to actually tell because they really didn't go into a lot of what Travolta did. They just talked about it, so they didn't really show
I know it.
a lot. So maybe it was like one scene of him in the jail cell trying to talk to his kid and being like an idiot.
He actually
And
looked better. He was. I mean, it's not good, but it's. I thought he was gonna be so bad in it, and it's not
Yeah.
as. It's not quite as bad as I thought he would be in it.
Right.
It's not good, but it's not as bad as
No,
I
it's not
thought
good,
he
but
would
it's
be.
good to watch because you need to click on it.
Yeah.
But it's like Anthony. He can't wait for the bad movie because it gives him a chance to get a lot of material.
Yeah.
He lives for the bad movies, and I totally agree with that. The other movie that I thought was when you talked about overrated,
Yeah.
there could be an overrated actor would be that guy that played in Twister.
Oh my God, Bill Paxton.
Bill Paxton. That guy would have been. I mean, that would be the laughable, embarrassing
Yeah.
heroin addict. I would think.
Yeah, yeah.
That
He would
be
never
overrated.
be able to play a drug addict.
I've never seen him play a heroin addict, but I mean, he would definitely be the overrated one.
He was good like in when he was younger, like when he was in Weird Science.
Yeah, but if you think of the part that he played, I mean, anybody could have played that part. You know.
That's true.
You know, you could have got anybody for that.
Yeah. I mean, like anybody could have played the part that little spot he had in Aliens. But other than that, yeah, I never really liked him either. You know what movie he was good in, and I know you agree. Is the movie he did with Billy Bob Thornton and Bridget
the one
Fonda.
Where they shot the guy in the woods or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Billy Bob Thornton, he just ran away with that movie.
Yeah, he carried everybody on his back. He ran away
with it. I mean, he carried everybody in that movie.
How good was he in that?
Yeah, I mean, Bill Paxton was very good in it, but he was subdued enough. He was trained.
Yeah.
He was definitely, he definitely had a noose around his neck with Billy Bob Thornton. I mean,
yeah.
It was his rule or forget about it. I could just see that.
Yeah.
And you can tell by, I mean, the only reason why Bill Paxton is good was because he was threatened by Billy Bob Thornton.
Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah.
Billy Bob Thornton, wow, or even attempting to.
I know it was I mean that he had it was such an unbelievable job he did in that. I couldn't he did carry everybody.
I gotta tell you that I can't remember the name of the movie, but it was an excellent movie.
It was a real basic title Into Deep or something. It was like A Simple Plan or something. Wasn't it A Simple Plan?
Yeah, it's a Simple Plan. That's right. A simple title, A Simple Plan.
Yeah.
And it was, I mean, if you watch the movie again, it seems like anybody who acted in that movie was following Billy Bob Thornton.
Yeah.
They were just, because that's the only thing I remember was Billy Bob Thornton's performance, that scene in the woods.
Yeah.
Where the final realization, that was
my God.
it was done very, very well.
Oh my God, I know. Yeah,
very well. I mean, but he's the only guy I remember in the whole damn movie. There could have been 20, 30 people in there. I don't know who they were. No idea. I have to watch it again.
Right. I thought, like Bridget Fonda was annoying in it.
She's annoying in any movie.
I know.
There's no reason for her. There's no reason.
Well, because Peter Fonda's kid, she's royalty.
Peter Fonda was the actor.
Yeah.
Peter Fonda was, I mean, his personality alone. I mean, his personality alone, he doesn't even need a script.
No, yeah,
he's got that
great.
Persona. He's got that gait about him. He doesn't. You don't even. I mean, just call him, tell him to show up, and don't even give him the script. Just tell him to, go in there and do whatever.
Yeah, he was.
The movie he was just in, old guy, When the World Came to an End. What was it? He was some scientist. Oh Jesus, I can't think of the name of it. But he was a scientist, and they were all looking for him. And he was supposed, I guess, turned out to be the bad guy, or he had the antidote, or something like that. and it was
I
some
don't
meteor
know.
coming to hit the planet or some crap like that. It's a shit movie, a shit script, but he carried the movie so well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He just went in there and just he was just himself. He's like his father,
Yeah.
you know. But Bridget Fonda is just a tool. I
Yeah,
mean,
she
she's just.
stinks.
I mean, there's no reason for her to exist.
How old was that
None.
movie?
Oh, what?
The Peter Fonda one.
The one I was talking about?
Yeah.
Just maybe a year ago.
Oh.
Yeah, just he's got to
Borderland?
be like. Let me see if I can look it up here.
I guess it don't matter.
But it's really a good movie. It's got nothing to do with drugs though. But
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I don't know if it was just. But no, you know what I saw that was really like a horrible movie, but I had to watch it because Henry Rollins was in it, and he had a cool character in the movie. He plays like this serial killer who hides, who collects the eyes of his of all his victims, and
he was in a movie.
yeah, well he's been in
Oh
he's
wow!
been in a
I
few
thought
movies.
he was a punk star.
He was,
Punk,
but
yeah,
he's been in some
that's all
movies.
I remember from.
But you remember he was in The Chase with Charlie Sheen. Remember he played the cop. Remember that's where sorry.
No, I don't remember that at all.
Remember I used to say standard issue street soldier.
Oh, that was him.
That was him. Yeah, it was. Well, that's a line he said from that movie when he's playing the cop chasing him.
Yeah.
He was in Heat. He played Van Zant's like right hand man in Heat. He didn't really have any lines though in that one.
Oh.
But he was like
I
bit parts.
never
though.
caught on.
But he played like this guy in this. I guess the movie's horrible. It came out like a year or two ago. It's about these people that rob a bank, and there's like every like postmodern cliche, I guess you could say, about a bank robbery movie in this, and the acting is really horrible. But Henry Rollins' character is really he does a good job in it. He's really and he's got a cool character. Like I said, he collects like the eyes of all of his victims, but you don't see him kill anybody except he starts killing the people who are robbing the bank because he ends up in because the bank's closing down and he shows up and he to get because he keeps all these eyes in in formaldehyde jars in a safety deposit box, and the bank's closing, so it's just him in the bank, and then while these bank robbers come in right after he's in the safety deposit box room, and so he ends up picking off all these bank robbers one by one while the cops are outside, and like it's a stupid movie, but he's really good in it.
Okay.
And yeah.
All right. Yeah, but getting back to the other issue,
Yeah.
I think, yeah, as far as like entertainment reasons and that kind of thing, I just don't, you don't see a lot of that around. That's why the movie that you're putting together, that would be, I mean, like I said, it's going to turn out to be an epic.
Oh, you think? I mean,
the way it's written and the way
Yeah.
it's being casted, I think it's going to be,
That's
you
going
don't
to
see
be
a lot
the
of
big.
those around. Like you and I were just having the last 15 minutes, and we couldn't think of maybe no more than 3 or 4 movies
Yeah, worth mentioning. I think there's a lot that.
worth mentioning. Yeah, now there's a cause.
Yeah, I can't believe there hasn't been. Aren't you kind of surprised that there hasn't been a lot of those? Like a lot of.
I am trying to research the reason for that. Like, why are people staying away from that?
Yeah, like as far
is it
as
really
movies,
too close to home?
I mean, that would be crazy.
Is that maybe the lost market because it's too close to home?
I don't know.
Is it involved in every family that ever lived? I mean, I don't get it.
I think that. I mean,
it's
that
almost
is
like
true.
It's not accepted.
Yeah, or it's just maybe people don't want to. Maybe I don't know. I just don't. I don't know. I mean, you would think that. I think that it's become. It's hard to get a fresh take on it, because I'll tell you, the people who would have a fresh take on it are people that have been involved in it themselves in a sort of more recent way. and those people aren't really very productive because they're in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it's like that kind of thing. You know, I just think the people who would be able to make a fresh perspective on it aren't doing it because they're getting high instead. You know?
I think most of them start out that way, then they end up being comedies anyway. It just end up being,
Or is it just
we're going too far this way, we're going too far that way. Let's
it's
just
very
make it a funny
difficult.
moment.
Yeah. Well, it's very difficult to make a movie like this because it's like one if you go a little to the left or the right, or it can be so easily
But you have to.
made fun of.
But you really got to.
Yeah. Well, there's
But,
such a it's so
hopefully
relevant.
Things end up being like a cult movie. Like, look, drug movie will be a cult movie.
Drugstore
That movie,
Cowboy.
Blow. Remember Blow?
Oh yeah, that's a yeah. Yeah, that was that's a cult movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a I mean, I wouldn't. I guess you know what it had a big budget, so it's hard to look at big budget movies as having like cult, but it is a cult movie though.
Right.
I would say like Drugstore Cowboys are like a definite cult movie just because it's such a small budget independent movie.
Yeah. What about
My Own Private Idaho
Fear and Private Idaho.
Even though River Phoenix's character was supposed to be a heroin addict in that, but he doesn't. You don't ever see him do any. You see him do a little coke or something that they stole off. What's his name? In the beginning, but other than that, you never see him do any drugs at all in that movie. But supposedly he's supposed to be a heroin addict. I have no idea. There's a theory about My Own Private Idaho that character was based on Kurt Cobain. That he used to be, because he was he grew up in Aberdeen, Washington, and moved to Olympia, Washington, and frequented Portland and that whole Idaho, Portland, Washington. Mostly Portland, Washington, and Idaho, that whole area. He was around all the time before he got famous, and that he to support his heroin habit became one of those like rent boy type male prostitutes for for a long time until his band got, because originally the movie was supposed to be about that kid who's talking about, he has that scene in the coffee shop where he's talking about he wants to write and produce his own music. I don't know if you remember. Do you remember that? Yeah, how long?
Do. Yeah, I do.
There's that scene with these kids talking about, I'm going to write my own music and I want to, I want to produce my own music. That scene was left in there, put in there on purpose because that guy who played that part in that little scene was supposed to be the main character. But when these bigger names, like when Keanu Reeves and River Phoenix signed on to do it, which is how they got the money to make the movie, they ended up becoming like the main characters, and then they had to put these other guys to the side who were like real deal rent boy fucking prostitute people that Gus Van Sant was going to put in the movie as like the main characters. That was like the original idea. And then once these big time actors signed on to do it, they got a lot more money, and then he had to change a lot of stuff around. But that's a huge theory. It's like a really old theory that he was part of some MK Ultra program because, I'm sorry, I'm confusing that with something else. No, that because Kurt Cobain was narcoleptic, a heroin addict, and lived in Portland and was known to, be involved with a lot of that nefarious sort of world before he his band
Right.
broke into the business. Kind of an interesting theory.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. I don't know if it's true or not, but
Right. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised.
No, absolutely not.
I mean, I figure, especially if you're a heroin. I mean, a lot of people do a lot of things to especially, you know, I love how people think because you did that at one time in your life, or you do it now or whatever, that you automatically do that to make money. It's like, first of all, it's not like you go out into the street and say, hey, you raise your hand and say, hey, anybody want to fucking, you know what I mean? First, you got to find people, creepy people who want to pay you to do that. I mean, you know, it's not like you're going to find that anywhere. You know what I mean? Like, you got to, you know, I mean, it's just as the source, a lot of the things have to you know what I mean? Like, people just assume, like, that's just like, you know, like going to McDonald's or something.
Right.
That always used to make me laugh.
How long were we doing?
I don't know. This has been a hell of a fucking withdrawal show. I think we, in like the hour and a half or whatever we've been on, I think we only talked about it for 20 minutes. Although, you know what? I am in withdrawal. So it's a withdrawal show regardless, right?
Right. But, no, I think we should do it again.
Okay.
We should do it again because I think there was a lot of issues that that you didn't touch on, that I didn't touch on.
Yeah.
That I think maybe we should do it again.
Okay.
And I think we need a better setting. Probably like maybe in the afternoon.
Okay.
Because I mean, I got up really early today. I'm really exhausted.
Okay.
It's like, you know, and I was trying to get it in my head. I kind of think, do I talk about this? And I have, you know, not that I'm watching what I'm saying, but the thing is that it's such a bridge, you know, where you go from, and you say you've got withdrawal symptoms from a drug, and then you've got research you're doing for a movie, what pharmaceuticals are actually up to, you know, like what is the reason, why is this taking this trend? You know, all this information you're really going to need, you know, that kind of thing. You need that to put all this stuff together. And we're touching on all of it, and kind of like at the same time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's where the I'm not going to say it's confusing. I think.
Hello?
Far enough. Hello, are you there?
Oh, yeah, you just broke out for a second.
Okay. Yeah, probably depends on where I'm sitting. But why don't we just wrap up and then you can do the edit, and then we can see how it came out.
Okay, I'll play us out then.
Yeah, okay.
What happened?
So, come to the end of another edition. You want to play? You want to say something to play us out, or do you want me to do it?
You can do it.
All right. Give me the awkward job of doing it. Well, thank you all for listening, and we hope you come back for the next one. And like I said, I am in withdrawal anyway, so it's a withdrawal show whether you like it or not. I know you probably wanted to learn a lot about it, but that's tough luck. And hope to see you next time, and take care, brush your hair. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.